Hi, my name is Madison Burgess. I will be analyzing The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka for Professor Clara Busby's EH212 QLC class. I will be analyzing this work, but as a creative aspect, I will be looking at it from the graphic novel perspective, the adaptation by Peter Kupta, as it's the same story and it has the same themes and symbols and everything, except the graphic novel aspect gives more emotion to the characters, which I wanted to really focus in on through deconstructionalism theory. And deconstructionalism theory is basically, it's that meaning is always deferred or postponed, and that there's no fixed objective truth, especially through language, and instead it's a process of difference and deferral in which words and concepts are defined in relation to what they are not. So it's looking outside of the box for hidden meanings or themes or symbols that aren't directly stated, but rather inferred or hinted at. And the theory is that there's always multiple readings and interpretations of a text, and that no single interpretation can be regarded as the correct one, as many readers have different backgrounds, perspectives, events in their lives that kind of shape the way that they look at a text. And The Metamorphosis was a perfect example of this, because there really is no real meaning behind it, especially Kafkaesque, which is not the same, but kind of the same as deconstructionalism theory. It's like the mundane day-to-day. There's really no point. It's basically nihilism. But so for language in the text, throughout the story, Gregor is unable to communicate effectively with his family because he is a beetle, as is one interpretation of the text. But due to his transformation, it limits his ability to speak to his family. And as a result, his family is unable to understand him, and he's unable to communicate his feelings and thoughts to them. This inability to communicate emphasizes Gregor's isolation and highlights the difficulties of being an outsider in a society that values conformity. And the text challenges the notion of established meanings and the reliability of language, as since he cannot communicate his actions and the motive behind his change or his transformation can only be inferred by his family. And I used page 30 of the graphic novel as an example because it shows that he's a bug, but it can be argued if he actually transformed into a bug or if it was more of a symbolic meaning of like depression or burnout or whatever any interpretation may be. That is the point of my theory. A key theme in the novel that I wanted to touch on and highlight is the deconstruction of identity. It's witnessed within Gregor and within the people around him. And in the Metamorphosis, this instability is reflected in the way that Gregor's transformation is never fully explained. It's leaving it to the reader to grapple with the ambiguity and uncertainty of his situation. Furthermore, the story can be read as a critique of the ideas of fixed objective truth. Now, within the objective truth is seen in the graphic novel. He's portrayed as a bug. He is drawn as a beetle, and he is experiencing the world as a beetle. But in the novel, it's never fully explained what happened to him. And to break apart his identity is to break apart his purpose and his role in life, which creates conflict and confusion within the characters and within Gregor himself, as he is uncertain of who he really is. Some readers may see the story as an allegory for the dehumanization of workers in a capitalistic society, while others may read it as a commentary on the existential crisis of the modern individual. Still, others may see it as a parable about the limits of empathy and human connection. Now, these are valid points considering Gregor was the main breadwinner for his family. He was overworked, he was underappreciated, and that became his sole purpose in life. He was only worried about his family, the well-being of his sister and his parents, and once he transformed into a bug or into whatever state he may have been in, he couldn't provide for them anymore. And so it has stripped his sense of purpose and his sense of being. And without these things, he is lost and spiraling even worse into his condition. Now, the parable about the limits of empathy and human connection are that his family only cared in the way that they were worried about their finances, and now that Gregor has not much, little to nothing to offer for them, they care for him, but not much beyond that empathy and connective. So the deconstruction of identity is evident in the Metamorphosis, as Gregor's transformation leads to a complete breakdown of his sense of self. The Metamorphosis is not only a physical change, but also a psychological one, as Gregor's transformation leads him to losing his identity as a human being. Its transformation results in him being perceived as a monstrous insect by his family and society, and this perception leads to his loss of dignity and humanity. For this example, I used page 40 from the graphic novel, as even his sister, who he cared the most about in the family, was repulsed by seeing him, and this led Gregor into a spiral of seeing himself in the way that he was being treated by the people he loved the most, the people that he cared about, and now that he can't provide for them, he feels useless. The subversion of roles is also portrayed in the Metamorphosis, as Gregor's transformation results in him becoming the family's burden rather than its provider. Now, he has seen his sole purpose in providing for his family. He's been stripped of every resource he can provide, every task he can accomplish. Now that he has not seen his value based on what he can do, he has devalued himself. And he was previously the sole breadwinner for the family, and a sudden transformation leads to his inability to work and provide for his family. As a result, the family members who previously depended on him are now forced to take on the role of caregivers. For this example, I used page 38, where it states Gregor passed many sleepless nights hot with shame and grief whenever he overheard discussions of the family finances. And for Gregor, this was a big deal because this was his identity. This was the reason he woke up every day. This was the reason he put in those long hours at the firm that he worked at. And now that he cannot help them, he feels useless and worthless because he did tie his role directly to his output of work and what he can accomplish. As a sole breadwinner for his family, his transformation makes him unable to fulfill this role. His sister, who's traditionally expected to be submissive and obedient, takes on a more active role in the family. This subversion of roles challenges established cultural norms, as decades ago, when the book was written, women weren't notorious for being the breadwinner or for working, let alone being successful and making enough money to sustain a family. So this subversion of roles threw off the entire trajectory of the relationships and the roles established in the book. This image I wanted to kind of focus on in the way that Gregor died in the end of the book. It was his tragic flaw, was his self-pity and an inability to see outside of the confines of his own perspective. So this image meant a lot to me because you can see where in the bottom left of the page there's a picture of him in a military uniform, and there is his military uniform. And not once in the book does he mention the service that he did for his country or what his country did for him. It's only ever shown briefly in this page. And for him not to acknowledge, let alone appreciate himself for the hard work that he has accomplished, instead of degrading himself for what he can't, that did inevitably lead to his downfall, his death. So, to conclude, as a deconstructionalist critic, I believe a text should question inherent truth as defined by nature. In the text, The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, this opposition to objective truth is transparent in the use of ambiguous and subjective meaning behind the themes and tones reflected in the novel. Throughout the book, there are many hidden Easter eggs and clues as to what can be perceived as truth, but it's never clearly stated. And the fact that the book doesn't have any black or white binary thinking is what led it to become such a famous and world-renowned novel, as it can be interpreted by several audiences with different backgrounds, different perspectives, different beliefs, and still have significant meaning. In my works cited, I cited deconstructionalism and the graphic novel written by Peter Kupta and Franz Kafka. So thank you so much.